The sound wasn't a crack. It wasn't a thud. It was the soft, papery slide of a check being pushed across a mahogany table. A blank check. The man who pushed it was Sam Giancana, the boss of the Chicago outfit, a man who controlled unions, police, and according to whispers, the White House. He was a man who didn't negotiate. He commanded. Sitting across from him was Dean Martin. Dean was alone. No manager, no bodyguard, no entourage, just a man in a silk suit nursing a glass of scotch. The air was thick with stale cigar smoke, garlic, and the metallic scent of some imminent violence. Two men stood in the shadows behind Giancana, their hands resting inside their jackets. Dean looked at the check. He looked at the man who could have him killed with a single nod. Most men would have trembled. Frank Sinatra would have signed it instantly. A politician would have signed it out of greed. A normal man would have signed it out of terror. Dean Martin took a slow drag of his cigarette. He exhaled a long gray plume of smoke. He reached out, not for the pen, but for his drink. He took a sip, set the glass down with a gentle clink, and said the words that no one in the history of the Chicago underworld had ever dared to say. "Sam," Dean said, his voice steady and calm. "The ink is too heavy. What happened in that room over the next 20 minutes is one of the greatest untold stories of the 20th century. This is how a singer from Steubenville, Ohio, stared down the devil and walked away without a scratch. To understand why Dean Martin's refusal was so insane, you have to understand the world he was walking into. The year is 1958. The Mafia owned show business. The Chicago outfit and the New York families owned the nightclubs, the jukebox distribution, the liquor licenses. If you wanted to sing in Manhattan, Vegas, or Chicago, you needed their permission. If you wanted your record played on the radio, you needed their blessing. Las Vegas wasn't a corporate Disneyland. It was a mob town. The Sands, the Dunes, the Riviera, they were built with Teamster pension fund money loaned out by mobsters. For an entertainer, you had two choices. You played ball or you didn't play at all. Frank Sinatra chose to play ball. He idolized these men. He loved the late-night sit-downs, the secret handshakes, the feeling of being protected by the toughest guys in the room. He thought that proximity to violence gave him power. But Dean Martin was different. Dean didn't view the mob with romanticism. Before he was a singer, Dean was a blackjack dealer in illegal gambling dens, a bootlegger, a boxer in underground rings for $5 a fight. He knew what these men were. They were thugs in expensive suits. He had seen them break fingers over unpaid debts. He had seen them ruin lives for sport. To Dean, they were just another boss. And Dean Martin hated bosses. He kept them at arm's length. He was polite, but he never asked for favors. He never owed them anything. He maintained a dangerous, delicate neutrality. Until the night Sam Giancana decided that neutrality was no longer an option. The call came on a Thursday. Dean was in his hotel room when the phone rang. "Mr. Giancana needs to see you," a voice said. Dry, flat. "I'm working," Dean replied. "Tuesday, the Armory Lounge, Chicago, 8 p.m. Come alone." The line went dead. Dean knew what this was. The Armory Lounge was Giancana's headquarters. You went there to receive orders or to receive judgment. Most men would have panicked. Dean just hung up the phone. He finished his drink. He simply told his tour manager to clear his schedule for Tuesday night. The flight to Chicago was turbulent. Winter had settled over the Midwest. Dean sat in first class looking out at the clouds. He knew the stakes. Sam Giancana was under pressure. The feds were circling. Giancana needed to show strength, and what better way than to make the biggest star in the world bend the knee? Dean took a cab from the airport. When he pulled up to the Armory Lounge, the street was quiet. Too quiet. A black Lincoln Continental was parked out front, engine idling. Dean stepped onto the sidewalk. The wind cut through his cashmere coat. He paused, lighting a cigarette. He took a deep breath of the freezing air. It might be the last fresh air he would ever breathe. He pushed open the heavy wooden door. The restaurant was closed. The chairs were stacked on tables. The only light came from the back, a warm yellow glow. Dean walked through the empty dining hall. His footsteps echoed. Click, click, click. He walked into the back room. At the center table sat Sam Giancana, eating a plate of sausage and peppers. He didn't look up when Dean entered. Behind him stood two large men. "Dino," Giancana said, wiping his mouth, "you're late." Plane was fighting a headwind, Sam, Dean said easily, pulling out a chair. You know how it is. Dean sat down. He didn't wait to be asked. He crossed his legs and leaned back. You want a drink? Giancana gestured to a bottle of scotch. I thought you'd never ask, Dean smiled. He poured himself a generous measure. Giancana watched him, looking for cracks, looking for the tremor in the hand. But Dean's hand was steady. So, Dean said after the first sip, to what do I owe the pleasure? Giancana pushed his plate away. My daughter, Giancana said. Bonnie, she's getting married next month, July 4th weekend. It's going to be a big wedding. I got judges coming. I got union bosses. I got the boys from New York. I want you to sing at the reception. And after the wedding, I want you to play at the Villa Venice, 2 weeks. Exclusive. The Villa Venice was a club Giancana owned, used to launder money and entertain high-level mobsters. Playing there wasn't a gig. It was a command performance for the underworld. Sam, Dean said, I'm booked. July 4th weekend. I'm opening at the Sands. Jack Entratter has me for 2 weeks. The contracts are signed. Can't be in 2 places at once. Giancana laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. Jack Entratter. Dino, I own him. You think a contract means anything to me? It means something to me, Dean said. It means nothing. Giancana slammed his hand on the table. The silverware rattled. I make a phone call and the Sands goes dark. It's not about the paper, Sam, Dean said. It's about my word. I told Jack I'd be there. This was the moment. Giancana couldn't believe what he was hearing. Nobody said no. Giancana reached into his breast pocket. He pulled out a leather checkbook. He wrote his signature at the bottom of a check. He didn't write a date. He didn't write a name. He didn't write an amount. He tore it out and slid it across the table. Fill it in, Giancana commanded. Dean looked at the check. Whatever Jack is paying you, Giancana said. Double it. Triple it. You want 100,000? Take it. You want 250,000? Write it down. Money is dirt to me. This is about respect. You play my daughter's wedding. You play my club. And you show everyone that you're with us. It was the ultimate trap. If Dean signed that check, he belonged to Sam Giancana. He would be owned. Dean looked at the check. He thought about his father, a barber who worked on his feet all day for pennies. He thought about the hard years in Steubenville. He thought about the freedom he had fought for. He finished his scotch. He placed the glass down. He put one finger on the check and slid it back across the table. The ink is too heavy, Sam, Dean said. Giancana blinked. What? The ink, Dean repeated. It's too heavy. I can't carry it. You're turning down a blank check? Giancana asked, his voice rising. Are you stupid or do you just want to die? I don't want to die, Sam, but I don't want to be owned either. He leaned forward. Look, you got Frank. Frank will do it. He loves this stuff. But me, I'm just a singer. I go where I said I'd go. If I break my word to Jack for money, then I'm just a whore in a tuxedo, and my mother raised me better than that. It was an insult. Giancana stood up. The chair fell backward. You think you're funny? You think because you're on the cover of magazines, you're safe? I can destroy you, Dino. I can make sure you never work again. I can make sure you have an accident on the golf course. The guards stepped forward. Their hands came out of their jackets. Dean didn't stand up. He lit another cigarette. Sam, Dean said, you can stop the records. You can stop the movies. You can ban me from every club. He blew smoke at the mob boss. But you can't stop me. What the hell does that mean? It means I don't care, Dean said. I was happy when I was a blackjack dealer making $50 a week. I was happy pumping gas in Steubenville. If you take all this fame away, I'll just go back to dealing cards. I'll play golf at the public course. I'll drink cheap wine and I'll be happy. He smiled. You can't threaten a man who doesn't need what you have, Sam. Frank needs the applause. I don't. I do this to pay the alimony. If the job goes away, I'll find another one. Giancana stared at him, searching for the fear that every other man showed. He found nothing. Just cool, detached indifference. Dean Martin was willing to walk away from Hollywood, from fame, from millions of dollars, just to say no. For a long, agonizing minute, the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator. Giancana looked at his guards. He looked at the blank check. He looked at Dean. If he killed Dean Martin, the FBI would swarm. But more importantly, if he killed Dean, he admitted that Dean had gotten under his skin. Giancana started to chuckle. Then he started to laugh. You crazy son of a bitch. You really mean it. Best gas pumper in Ohio, Dean winked. Clean the windshields for free. Giancana picked up the check. He tore it into little pieces and let them flutter to the floor. "Get out of here, Dino," Giancana said. "Go back to Vegas. Go sing for Jack." "Thanks, Sam," Dean said, standing up. "I'll send a gift for the wedding. Just go, before I remember that I'm supposed to be a tough guy." Dean walked to the door. He felt the eyes of the guards burning into his back. Every muscle wanted to run, but he walked slowly. He checked his watch. He adjusted his collar. He opened the door and stepped out into the cold Chicago night. When the door clicked shut behind him, Dean leaned against the brick wall. His legs felt like jelly. His heart was hammering. He pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and wiped the sweat from his forehead. "Jesus Christ," he whispered. He had just played Russian roulette with a fully loaded gun, and the chamber had clicked empty. Dean Martin did eventually play the Villa Venice a few years later when he decided to do it, when the schedule worked for him. He did it as a favor, not as a conscript. But that night in 1958 changed everything. The mob knew they couldn't own Dean. They could do business with him, but they couldn't command him. Frank Sinatra spent his whole life chasing the approval of these men, and they used him like a dish rag. Dean Martin treated them with indifference, and they respected him like a king. Sam Giancana later told an associate, "Dino, he's the only one of those Hollywood phonies who's a real man." This story teaches us something profound about power. Power isn't about money. It isn't about having a blank check. Power is the ability to walk away. When you are willing to lose everything to keep your dignity, you become untouchable. Dean Martin showed us that the most powerful word in the English language isn't yes, it's no. He looked into the abyss and he didn't blink. He just ordered another drink. So the next time you feel pressured to compromise who you are, remember the blank check, remember the heavy ink, and remember the man who said no to the mob. This is Dean Martin Legacy Stories. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button. Share it with someone who needs a lesson in backbone, and subscribe for more untold stories of courage, class, and the secrets behind the Rat Pack. Until then, keep swinging, pal, and remember, your word is the only thing you truly own.